All right. So we've got a couple different ways we can solve radicals. The big thing is to get the radicals isolated. You can either get a radical on each side. If you're lucky, you have radicals on each side, and you can just get rid of the radical by doing whatever it says. Like, look at number 1. We've got a square root on both sides, and how do we get rid of a square root? That's what you do. So we would go through and we would say, okay, to get rid of this, we would just square both sides. That becomes easy enough. Square and square root go away, and we're left with 3x minus 20 equals 24 minus x. Then we just solve. Now the only thing is look what it says here at the end. Always check for extraneous solutions, and we'll have to talk about what an extraneous solution is. Okay? An extraneous solution is a solution that doesn't work. So we are actually going to have to look at them and plug them back in and check them if we think there's a question. So now to solve this one, we're going to move the x over to the other side and add x here. We're going to move this to the other side and add 20 on this side. So we end up with 4x on this side. And so we divide both sides by 4 and we get x's. So now we have to check it.
It's right.
Guys, what we have to do is we have to look and see. You can sometimes visually, if we do 3 times, what we're trying to make sure of is we don't end with a negative under the radical, right? So if we do 3 times 11, that's 33. 33 minus 20 is a positive number. So we end up with, we check it, we end up with positive 11 on one side. And if we do 24, 33 minus 20, I'm sorry, 13. Yep, 13. All right, and then 24 minus 11 is, do we end up with the same thing on both sides? Yep, so it checks. So this is my solution. You do need to check it, because sometimes you're going to end up with ones that do not work. If you end up with more than one solution, typically is when you've got to really look at it. So let's check what are we going to do for number 2? Yep. How do we get rid of a square root? Since it's on both sides and they're both isolated, we again. So 2k plus 24. So now we finish solving. So see if you can solve this one. So check your answer. Did you get it? Now we have to actually check it. So we're going to do 2 times negative 8 is negative 16 plus 24, which is 8. And then we do negative 8 minus 2 times negative 8. So that would be positive 16 minus 8, which is 8. So we end up with something that works. On both sides, it's the same. Okay? So this is our answer. Now, we're not going to do every single one of these because I do want to, this is such an easy lesson. So how do we get rid of a cube root? Cube it. How do we get rid of a 4th root? Take it, raise it to the 4th power, right? So do we really need to do either one of these?
No.
Nah.
What if it was a cube root and a square root?
You can't do that.
No, we don't work it out. We just leave it blank.
Well, you don't know how to do that.
Oh, so we wouldn't have that.
No. All right, so I'm going to skip 3 and 4, but now let's look at 5. 5 doesn't have a radical on both sides. 5 only has a radical on one side. So the idea is isolate the radical and then apply the power. So that means get it down to just the radical on one side. Well, if you look at number 5, it's already isolated, isn't it? So what are we going to do to both sides here? Let's do number 6 instead, because 5 we've already done squaring. So what are we going to do to solve 6?
Cube it.
Cube it.
Just to clarify, what is that 25?
Wait, on number 5, you would have squared both sides, right? So she wants
Square
to-
both. Square both.
Minus 17.
Yep, 6y minus 17 equals 25 and solve. All right, so now what is 4 cubed? So we end up with 64 over here, and what do we end up with on the other side?
1 minus 17.
Yep. So negative 7c equals 63, so c is... Okay, now, here's the fun part. If it's not a square root or a fourth root or an even root, guess what? Do you really even need to check it? Are you ever going to end up with an undefined with an odd root? No, because you can take the odd root of a negative number, can't you? So if it's an odd root, you really don't need to check it. You just need to check square roots and fourth roots and sixth roots, etc. Even roots you have to check. Odd roots, doesn't matter. Okay, so do we even need to check this one? Nope. We know it's going to work. All right, so let's look at number 9. Can we just straight up start squaring?
No.
What do we need to do first?
You got it plus 9.
Whoa. We got divide or add? Divide, because this is multiplication.
Oh, because I see that.
Yep. See, you got to be careful. So now we have the square root of 4g plus 13 equals what?
5.
Now what do we do?
Square root.
Apply square. So square and square root go away. We're left with 4g plus 13 equals?
25.
So 4g is equal to what? So g is 3. It is a square root, so we do need to check. So negative 9, 4 times 3 plus 13, negative 45. Negative 9, that's 12 plus 13 is square root of 25, right? So that's negative 9 times 5. Does indeed equal negative 45, doesn't it? So it does work. All right. Do we need to try number 8?
Can we try that by ourselves?
Try it by yourselves.
So this one you can't subtract.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
2, 4, 8, 16. 2 to the 5th is 32. See what I mean about the lessons getting easier in this section? We started with the hardest one and then we're sort of progressing to the easiest.
This is simple.
I know.
Yeah, because we did this last year. I feel like I can read it.
All right. So are we good so far?
Yeah.
All right. So now let's look at number, just tell me in number 9 what you'd have to do to set it up.
Divide by 2.
Whoa.
Okay. Add 9.
Thank you.
Divide by 2.
Add 9, then divide by 2, and then cube. Yes. All right, so let's move to number 10. That is a little bit tougher. Why is this one going to be tougher?
Because you don't have X.
Yup. But y'all know how to handle that.
Wait.
And then you have to move the x squared so it can equal c squared.
I wouldn't move the x squared. I'd move everything else.
So you
Oh, so
you won't have a negative.
Yeah, you don't want to factor with a negative in front of the x squared. So move everything to where the x squared is.
So would it be x squared minus 18 plus 7x?
I would do plus 7x. Now, will that factor?
Yes.
Yes.
9. Yeah.
Plus 9 and minus 2. Okay, so now what would the answers be potentially?
Negative 9.
Now these you have to check.
Okay, wait.
So we're going to check the first one. We're going to check -9.
I think it's
So 18 plus 63 is what? 81? So we got square root of 81 on one side and -9 on the other. Does this check? No. So that one gets thrown away.
Wait, I thought square root of 81 is plus or minus now.
Not in this case.
So it'd be
Well, we
negative.
should have known that already.
Okay, yeah, just don't check it equals.
Square root.
So it equals,
No, it equals
9.
positive.
So not negative 9 can't equal 9. Negative 9 can't equal positive.
That's right. So we throw out -9.
So it's just 2.
Oh, it's gonna be 2. Something gotta be the answer.
Not necessarily.
Cause 14.
So square root of 18 minus 7 times 2 equals 2. So 18 minus 14 is square root of.
Oh, that's right. Oh yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
If it was neither one, it'd be
no solution. All right.
How come when I typed that in the calculator all at once, it just gave me the answer of 4 without the square root? Like I did square root 18 minus 7 parentheses 2 parentheses outside equals, and I got 2.
That's it.
Oh no, I think I typed it in wrong last
What it was supposed to be. All right, so let's look at 11. We're getting harder here.
It's okay.
What do we do?
Square
Square
root
both
also.
sides. So it's going to be e squared minus 14.
No, negative 7 squared.
No, you don't do that. You do, it's minus 14. What you gotta do.
What is it that you say?
Square, double, square.
And then it's plus 40.
Wait, so you don't piece it?
Square it,
Oh, because you
Double it.
piece them up.
square it. Square, double, square.
So then you
Yeah,
got
then
2
it's a
times negative 7.
Yeah, that's what you do.
And then you add a p with it. And then you get 49.
Yes. It's just an easy way to do it in your head, right? So you don't have to write it out.
Square the p and
Equals.
8p minus 16.
All right, so now we have a quadratic potential here, so we need to move stuff, don't we? So finish solving this. Ooh, that's when you have to think about.
Oh,
All right, guys. Guys, if you have trouble with these, like 112, just start factoring. You know 112 is even, right? So that is 2 and what? 56? Which is then what?
4 and
7 and 8 or 4 and whatever. You can keep going. So what I start looking at this point is I start doing different factor pairs. And as it turns out, I'm going to look at maybe like, I know I need 22, correct? So immediately I notice this. What's 7 times 2? And 14 and 8 add up to what? So you can see if you don't know immediately, like 112 isn't super obvious, you can start factoring it and figure out what different combinations would be. Do you see what I'm saying?
How did you get it? You subtract 8.
Oh, I
So this is going to be P minus 14 and P minus 8 equals 0. So P is 8 or P is, now you got to double check them. All right, so are either of them extraneous?
No, wait, square root of 8 times negative 8 is 64. Wait,
The 8 is right.
Good.
Yeah,
So
'cause
8
you
works.
put it
Check 14.
No, I got it equals 7. It works too. 14 minus 7 equals 7.
Good.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it.
And you are correct. They both work. So they are both solutions. So I'm just going to slap some brackets around them. Yep.
no,
Neither of them extraneous. Extraneous means extra. Throw it away. You don't need it. All right. So are we feeling okay about this part so far? All right. So now let's talk about rational exponents. Guys, do not flip out about these. Please remember that if you have nth root of x to the mth power, that is the same as saying x to the m over n.
I love these.
All we have to do is take this and change it into that form, don't we? So the 1/2 power is the same as what?
square root.
Okay, so we're just going to rewrite this as 6p minus 23 square root. And that becomes what? Easy. Doesn't it? So solve it real quick and tell me what p is. Oh, plus 7. Boom. Sorry.
Where did the 7 go?
The idea, though, is that you still have to you change the form, isolate, and solve just like we know how to. Good. Did everybody get 8? All right, so let's look at 15 real quick. 2/3 power. How do we get rid of a 2/3 power?
No, put it under a cube root.
Well, we have to square and put under a cube root, but I don't want to have to do this in 2 steps. So how can I get rid of 2/3 just in one fell swoop? What do you multiply 2/3 by to get rid of it?
3/2.
Ah,
Oh, that was.
by what? 3/2. So we are going to raise this to the 3/2 power, which means we raise this to the 3/2 power.
Wait.
Because what happens here? Read what it says up here. It says, raise each side to the reciprocal of the power.
I remember this
1 to the 3/2 is 8.
So 5v minus 22, this becomes what? The square root of 4 to the 3rd power, right? Now you can just throw that in your calculator, but 4 to the 3rd power is 64. Square root of 64 is 8. So you can do it in your head too.
Wait, Miss, can you go back to your little example you did
Yep.
on the side so I can write it?
I got
No,
16.
no.
Oh, this one? Yeah.
Yes.
Because you put the 2 outside and you put the 3.
But remember, if you don't remember how to do that, guys, look. If you did 6p, just to be clear, if you did 6p minus 23 raised to the 1/2 power, you could subtract 7 from this side. Now, you can get rid of this. You do 2 over 1, don't you? So this would be to the 2nd power, which is what we did, isn't it? And it would still get rid of it. So that reciprocal power thing works. So what do we end up with here for v?
6.
V is 6. And you'd have to double check that and see. But why don't you see if you can do 16?
Wait, when I done
When you do what?
4 times 3 halves, I got 6.
Well, 4 times 3 halves, but that's not times 3 halves. It's 4 raised to the 3/2 power.
I know. Is that just a coincidence that our answer was 6?
Yes,
That's just a coincidence.
just a coincidence.
Now, these cancel out.
Don't say that. Don't we get the next one?
That's a big number.
It's just 16. Did you cube? Oh my gosh. Did you cube? Wait, what? Did you put the cube and then multiply it equals to 16?
Hold on.
How do you get 16 right there? Well, you can either raise 8 to the 4th power and take the cube root, or I did the easy thing, which is I took the cube root of 8, which is 2, and then raised it to the 4th power. Doesn't matter which order you do it in. You can take the root first and then apply the power, or you can apply the power and then take the root.
So I just put that straight into the calculator.
They're on the same level. So I do the thing that's easier. And the thing to me that was easier is to take the cube root and make the number smaller before you have to raise it to a power.
I'm gonna check for extraneous solutions. 2 squared is 4 plus 4 plus 12 plus 7 equals 2.
It works. 2 works. 2 works. 15.
Oh, I forgot to do to the
Yeah, no. 8 doesn't work.
both of them work.
It's -8, by the way,
Oh.
not +8.
Yeah, it worked too. Ooh, I just saw that. I was trying to mess up, so I
Both of them work.
Mm-hmm.
I believe school early. I'm sorry. I'll be honest. I should. This sounds like
All right, so that's it for today's lesson. That's the hardest part of it. It's just not hard today, is it? All right, so what I want you doing, though, for the rest of the class period, since we've covered that, is you've got the rest of the time, which is about an hour, to work on that. You've got quite a bit of time. Well, no, about 40 minutes. You got about 40 more minutes to work on that crossword puzzle. Get that thing done. Get the crossword done first, please. That's the stuff that's going to be hard. This homework is going to take you 5 minutes to do practice. You're going to whip right through it.
I want some wits before I go to work.
Well, thank you.
Who just said
Miss
that?
Duffy,
Yes.
Bridget Jones is checking out.
Checking on leave. Come on,
Well, that was perfect timing, wasn't it, Bridget?
Right. Dang.